headless commerce, it's really known for its benefits. I think a lot of merchants love the idea of the speed that it could provide in terms of page load speed and, like the conversion rate improvement associated with page load speed. But, are there other advantages to the development process? So maybe things that aren't talked about as much. What are some takeaways from your point of view, Devin?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that kind of goes under the radar is the consolidation of your front end, essentially. So, like today, for a lot of monolithic architectures, you have customers that really have to favor certain device types when it comes to their web storefront. Like if they have a lot of mobile users, they're obviously going to favor that code base and then kind of trickle off to desktop and tablet to really sort of track behind that mobile lead, or the inverse if they're doing it with desktop. But by going through a PWA, framework, you now are like consolidating that whole front end code base to work with all your device types from just one front end. And I think that really gets lost within the conversation.
I think that's a great one, and it's funny because at Nacelle, and this is something that I don't think is talked about too often, but there's also that parallel on the back end, isn't there? Like there's something to be said. I'd love to hear your take on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think by allowing to enable their teams to really use their best software available for the backend, I think is kind of that parallel to the backend. So now if you have this sort of abstraction layer like a cell sitting in the middle, you can really enable your teams to choose a new PIM without having to worry about how that's going to be communicated to the front end and worrying about setting up all these API calls, or doing the same thing with their content management system. It really enables this idea of best in breed in terms of scalability and growth.
I think what's so interesting about this part of the conversation is e-commerce brands, they have the potential to grow so fast. I mean, we've
Mhm.
seen this over and over again. I think COVID maybe accelerated some of this, but even before that, I mean, the growth rate of some of these companies is just phenomenal. I think merchants that are going headless, I don't know if they want to pin themselves into a corner to say just one content management system, right? They really want it to be decoupled. And what we realize is maybe folks will choose the content management system that's right for them at 10 or 20 million, but they don't want to have to radically rebuild their entire tech stack and their front end 3 years down the road when they're past 100 million in revenue and they're just ramping and they realize they need a completely different content management system. I think the problem is if you chose a headless commerce system that had an opinion on what content management system you were using or had it built in, you lose that ability to be flexible as you grow and scale.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like you said, you're almost getting vendor locked at the end of the day if you have all of these things that are really tied closely together. And yeah, I mean, not to reiterate or just to repeat what you said, but that really slows your process down. Really just keeps you behind the head of the pack.
You use that word abstraction. I think that's kind of like a natural part of this conversation, but like, what does abstraction mean? I think developers understand this term, but maybe for folks who aren't as technical, like, what is abstraction? Why is that valuable in this conversation about headless?
Yeah, it's super valuable, and I think we're going to talk about this in a little bit around just like how APIs really work when you're communicating from your backend systems, your content management system over to your front end PWA. So if you think about like that process of your customer coming to your site and that front end needing to make all these calls to all these systems in order to show the customer the right thing that they need to be seeing, you can start to think that without an abstraction layer to be able to kind of manage all this information that needs to be pulled for the context of the front end, you're going to have a lot of APIs just flying around all the place, like developers needing to make sure that everything is being tracked and nothing is getting lost for that customer experience. So having that abstraction layer like Nacelle in the middle to not only get rid of all those API calls and consolidate them down to one, but have everything readily available for your customers so everything is super performant is that value within an
Really, really
abstraction
well
layer.
said, Devin. Yeah, love that.